Eleanor stood in front of her dresser for 11 minutes. She wasn't sorting or folding. She was just standing there, one hand resting on the top drawer and the other holding a blouse she bought in 1998. She hadn't worn it since 2001. The drawer had been open for 11 minutes. And Eleanor, who had managed 40 people, balanced huge budgets, raised 3 children, and buried a husband, could not close it. Here's what she didn't know yet. That drawer was never about the blouse. It was about who she was when she bought it and the life that blouse represented. The woman who bought it in 1998 was a working mother who wore blouses to meetings. The woman standing there now was retired and hadn't been to a meeting in 4 years. Those 2 women don't wear the same clothes. But nobody had ever told Eleanor she was allowed to become the second one. So every time she opened that drawer, she met both versions of herself. Most decluttering advice wasn't written for someone like Eleanor. It was written for people still collecting things for the future. The advice says, "Have you used this in the past year?" Eleanor hadn't worn the blouse in 23 years. By that logic, it should have been gone long ago. But the moment she held it, something tightened in her chest. The advice had nothing to say about that feeling. It explained clutter, but not grief. So she stood there with the drawer open, unable to move forward. Before we go any further, I want you to hear this. You do not need to declutter your entire house. You don't need a weekend project or a complicated system. You need one drawer. Here's what most decluttering guides don't understand about being over 60. At 35, you look at unused things and think, I have too much stuff. At 65, the feeling is very different. You think, I used to be someone who needed these things. That's not clutter. That's grief wearing a different name. The usual advice tells you to empty everything out. Make a keep pile, a donate pile, and a discard pile. For some people, that works, but not for everyone. If you've ever emptied a closet and felt exhausted before you even started sorting, you're not failing. You're simply using advice that wasn't designed for this stage of life. When you're younger, every decision is about the future you're building. Later in life, many decisions are about honoring the past while making room for the present. So today, we're not emptying closets. We're not making giant piles across the floor. We're going to do something much smaller and much kinder. Pick one drawer. Any drawer will do. A bedside drawer, a bathroom drawer, or even the kitchen junk drawer. Now ask yourself 3 questions. Not, have I used this recently? That question only looks backward. Instead, ask, does this belong to the person I am now? Not the person you used to be or hope to become, but the person you are today. Does the blouse belong to her? Does the broken pen belong to her? Does the faded receipt from years ago belong to her? Eleanor knew the answer almost immediately. The pain wasn't really about the blouse. It was about admitting that she had changed. The second question is simple. Would I notice if this disappeared tomorrow? Not someday, not maybe. Tomorrow. For most things hiding inside a drawer, the honest answer is no. And once you know that, the decision becomes much easier. The third question changes everything. Is there someone who could use this right now? Suddenly, it stops being about throwing something away. An old menu can go without regret. But unopened pens, hand cream, or notebooks might help someone else today. Giving something forward feels very different from losing it. One feels like letting go. The other feels like passing something on with purpose. That small shift changes the entire experience. Eleanor closed her drawer after 7 minutes. Not 11. The questions were easier than standing there hoping for clarity. She kept 4 things. Everything else went into a donation bag. Old coupons, broken pens, an unrecognized photograph, and yes, the blouse. The next morning, she dropped the bag at a donation center. Later, she told me something I'll never forget. "I thought I'd feel lighter, and I did. But mostly," she said, "I felt like I had finally made one decision that matched who I am now. That felt bigger than light. It felt true." The next morning, she opened the drawer for her reading glasses. It was quiet, not crowded with reminders of every version of herself she'd ever been. She stood there for a moment and smiled. The person she was today finally felt in charge. That's what one small drawer can do. You don't have to tackle another drawer tomorrow. You don't even have to do one next week. The pace doesn't matter nearly as much as the choice. One drawer where everything belongs to your life today is enough to begin. The rest of the house can wait. Because this was never really about a drawer. It wasn't even about a blouse. It was about one quiet question that eventually comes to all of us. Who am I now? Every stage of life asks us that in a different way. Retirement, children leaving home, moving house. They all ask for change. Each time you let go of something that no longer fits your life, you're answering that question. You're saying, "That was me once, but this is who I am today." Decluttering isn't really about owning less. It's about becoming more yourself. The objects simply tell the story of who you used to be. You don't have to keep every chapter open forever. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to become someone who no longer needs the blouse. You're allowed to have one quiet drawer with only what truly belongs there. And you're allowed to feel that it's enough. So here's my invitation. If this spoke to you, choose one drawer today. Not the whole house, just one drawer. Ask yourself those 3 questions. Does this belong to the person I am now? Would I notice if it disappeared tomorrow? Could someone else use it today? That's the whole method. One drawer, one decision, and one small step forward. Sometimes, that's all it takes to begin a new chapter. If you do it, I'd love to hear about it. Tell me which drawer you chose and what surprised you most. And if this conversation helped you, share it with someone who may need it too. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, take good care of yourself. You're allowed to become the person you are today.